Well, it was an exciting weekend, obviously to have 12 players that have signed NFL contracts, 6 that have drafted, and 6 that are signed with NFL teams. We're excited for them that they can continue on with their dreams of playing in the NFL, as many of them come to Notre Dame knowing that the mission is to play for championships and to graduate, and then one day, play in the NFL. It made for a great weekend for all of their families. So very, very excited for all of them. Each one of them has a different circumstance. And all of them are going to do exceedingly well because they're prepared. This isn't about getting to the NFL. This is about staying in the NFL. And I think one of the things that gets lost in this is that, you don't come to Notre Dame to go to the NFL. You come to Notre Dame to graduate, to play for championships, and to have a long career. Getting to play in the NFL, we don't want it to be an experience. We want it to be one where you can really have a long career and reap the benefits from it. So having said that, we'll open it up to the questions.
Okay, great. We're going to start with Cole Kmet. So the first question regarding Cole is, a lot was made about the Bears having 10 tight ends on their roster when they drafted him. What does Cole have to do to maybe stand out from the group and potentially start on opening day?
Yeah, the Chicago Bears is an operation that understands clearly their personnel, and they would not have drafted Cole Kmet if he was the 10th tight end. He clearly is an investment, a large financial investment. I think that's a $3 million signing bonus, or in the neighborhood of a $3 million signing bonus. You don't make those kind of investments unless you know what you're getting. And what they're getting is an athletic tight end that is going to impact their offense immediately. He's smart. He's got the capabilities to get better and better as he continues to develop. So, having a lot of tight ends on your roster is one thing. Having Cole Kmet, well, that's another.
The next question is regarding his speed. It says, Mike Tannenbaum on ESPN Radio felt as though Cole Kmet isn't fast, and NFL teams wouldn't have to account for him in the passing game. How do you see his game translating to the Bears, and talk about where you see his speed?
I don't know. I guess Mike Tannenbaum knows more than all of the NFL teams that have evaluated him. I coached him, so I don't remember Mike being at any of our practices as he ran down the middle of the field. He's got plenty of speed. He'll be able to utilize it against safeties and nickel matchups. So speed will not be the issue with Cole Kmet. He'll be able to use that speed. I've had Travis Kelce, Tyler Eifert, Kyle Rudolph, Durham Smythe. I've had a number of tight ends that are doing exceedingly well and have been all pros in the NFL. Cole Kmet will be in line with all of those guys.
When Cole Kmet declared early for the NFL draft, how confident were you that he would be a first or second round pick?
I was pretty confident that he was going to be, one of the top tight ends. I think that the thing with Cole is it's always a matter of, do you want to do this right now? Because, he had the option to come back for another year, and he probably could have been the number one tight end next year as well. So it really just becomes a preference of, do you want to stay in school another year, enjoy, I think, his brother being here, was a factor, whether he could play baseball with him for another year, leveraging that, so there were many factors that he had to consider. I don't think it was an easy decision. Once he made it, we supported him 100% because it was not a slam dunk decision one way or the other. But he made the right decision. His family was, obviously very important in guiding him, and it's worked out great. And he's doesn't have to go very far to put on his NFL uniform.
How did Cole show his leadership over the years?
Well, Cole, obviously is still a young player in our program in a sense that, he's still growing, still developing. But, he earned a leadership role as one of our SWAT team leaders. Look, early on, everybody has to, find their place. And Cole was respected immediately just by his work ethic, doing the right things, living up to the standards that are set in the program. So, everybody, obviously looks towards those guys that are doing the right things on a day-to-day basis. And Cole certainly was doing that.
Last one on Cole Komet. How much growth do you think is still there for him, given he was splitting his attention between football and baseball until fairly recently? And what areas do you see him being able to improve on?
Yeah, I've said this to a number of GMs and coaches that I talked to in the evaluation process with Cole. I thought that there was a lot of growth there still for him. And, I think you could look at just as clearly his athletic ability shows itself, right? His physicality, you look at the Georgia game coming off an injury, ran through, a very good defense in Georgia, but, route running, I think, he'll get a chance to you know, work on that on a day-to-day basis. Remember, this is a full-time job now. He doesn't have to worry about academics. He'll be much better at route running, inline blocking, the technique associated with combination blocks, working with the offensive line. All those areas he's going to be able to really elevate his technical game. He's a smart football player. He's an athletic football player. So I think the technical things you'll see great improvement.
Okay, we're moving on to Chase Claypool now. About Chase Claypool, at what spots in your offense did you use him throughout his career, and where does he project to fit best with the Steelers?
Well, his size obviously stands out. So, you like to match him out on the perimeter because of his size, his ability to, run the line on the outside where you put the ball up one-on-one, let him use his size to an advantage. But we've had him inside. We've played him in the slot a little bit as well. He's extremely versatile. He can come down and block anybody, the safeties, rovers, corners, obviously. He can mismatch on them. He's got great versatility. I mean, obviously, his last year he played in the short field for us. He was our W receiver. In college football is a little bit different with the hash marks. He worked in the short field, which gave us one-on-one matchups, which he could, usually win those with regularity. But he's a guy that can play, a flank on either side of the formation. But again, has the physical tools to play anywhere at the wide receiver position.
Do you typically recruit in British Columbia? And if not, how did Chase Claypool get from there to Notre Dame?
Well, certainly we're in Germany now, and British Columbia. We're going to go where the players are. But this was a tip that we got from a friend of ours over the years that we've been in recruiting. They were in Canada with a camp, and we got some film, and we were pleasantly surprised that he was a young man that, when we did some research on him, was a really good student. And we were up on the West Coast. We were up in Washington, Oregon recruiting, and it was a very short flight. So we took it, loved what we saw in a competitive situation in basketball, and began to dig a little bit more on who he was as a person. And the way he really impressed us was his competitiveness. Certainly there's a lot of guys that can run and catch, but we loved the way he competed. And we felt for us it was a wide receiver with great size and great potential. And hats off to him. He realized that potential. He bought into our strength and conditioning program and matured. And he's a great success story because, he put in the time and effort in a program that, you will develop here at Notre Dame if you come in with the right mindset, and he certainly did.
How do you view Chase's growth and development through his 4 years on campus? What evolutions in his game did you see?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's just, when you come to any program, it's kind of finding your position. And, Chase got moved around a lot because we had players in front of him, whether it was early in his career and you had Equanimous St. Brown, or you had, you know, uh, Torrey Hunter. He was always behind a really good player, whether it was to the wide field or the boundary, and he had Miles Boykin. So I think once he found himself in a position where he could get consistent reps, it was just a matter of how he practiced. And I think when the change really occurred for Chase in terms of his play is that he became a great practice player. I think all the really, really good players, show themselves in practice. And I think it's when he came to practice every day and started to practice in a manner that would prepare him to be a great player is when we really saw a difference in him, and that then carried over in the classroom, and it carried on in the community and how he handled himself. And so maturity and all those things started to kick in as well. And that's just the maturation process that you see in every program.
What skills does Chase possess that best translate to the NFL game?
Well, I think, first and foremost, as I mentioned, it's what attracted us to him, and that's his competitiveness. He's extremely competitive. He wants to win in everything he does. Secondly, he takes care of himself, physically fit, answers the bell every week, very durable, play after play, snap after snap. He's not a guy that is prone to injury. I think the other thing is that, he has some unique traits, physical traits. Everybody's looking for traits. And the physical traits for him are his size and length and radius, catching radius, that he can go up and catch the football and create mismatches. So, elite traits, physically, and then from, certainly an excellent standpoint, he's got an incredible drive and competitiveness in him that separates him amongst many.
Okay, we're going to move on to Julian Okwara. In your experience, even though they never played together in high school or college, what type of influence has Romeo Okwara had on Julian? And how will playing on the Lions with Romeo help Julian adjust to the NFL?
Yeah, there'll be a big influence. They're very different. Romeo is laid back and very measured, and Julian can be a little bit more emotional at times, and they uh, they will be a great tandem, not only on the field but off the field, and it'll be it's just a great match. So I think as big brother, little brother, one's a little bit has the more of the wisdom and rational way of doing things, and the other one sometimes comes across as a little bit, I'd say, hot-tempered at times. But I think the maturity aspect of Julian has been one that I've really enjoyed watching him. He became a captain this year, and he's turned that into um, a really good trait. And so it'll be fun to see these guys on the field together for the first time.
Did you ever call Julian Romeo on accident? And do you have any good stories about the brothers that you can share?
Oh, I'm sure I did. I've had so many brothers combinations play for me. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm sure they can point out the times that I have. Um, I don't know that I have any particular stories other than it's a very close family, and and I think that Julian and Romeo have not been. It's not your typical rivalry in a sense of sibling rivalry. They've always been very supportive, and when Romeo comes around, Julian is obviously very excited to see him, but Romeo doesn't get. He's never been that guy that is giving advice. He kind of stays back, and he's always let Julian be who he is, and I've always appreciated that, the way Romeo has handled Julian and letting Julian be who he is. And I think it's really helped him a lot. It helped him grow here at Notre Dame. And I think it served him well as he's moved on his career.
Next question. The Detroit Lions quickly signed Jalen Elliott. What kind of opportunity do you think he has to stick in the NFL?
Well, I talked to Matt Patricia about him. Matt likes him a lot. I mean, he likes his physicality. We kind of talked about Patrick Chung, who he had at New England, physical player, really good around the line of scrimmage. Matt plays a lot of cover one, and they're going to need a safety that's going to have to roll down and support the box. And I think Miami plays the most cover one. I think the Lions are the second most in the NFL. And Julian will need to come down. They'll need one of those safeties to come down and support the box. So, yeah, he's got a really good shot. And that's why they signed him so quickly. And he'll be given a fair opportunity to make that team.
And what were your conversations with Matt about Julian and the member of the coaching staff?
Well, I think what separated Julian from the other guys is that, Julian, not only is he twitchy and a true pass rusher, and again, trying to sort out who the true pass rushers are in this past draft, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Matt saw him as a true pass rusher, but what he loved about him, and what I think is his clear differentiating trait, is that he has strong and physical hands, and he's a strong player, and that is Julian. So if you want somebody to bull rush, he can bull rush you. He's not just a guy that's going to rush off the end. So if a tackle is sitting really back and try to play the speed rush, Julian can take that tackle and drive him back. So that was a differentiator for him, and I think that's what Matt really liked about him and the scouting staff at Detroit.
Last two on Julian. One of the questions is about virtual pro days for players like Julian Okwara, Jalen Elliott, and others. Did NFL teams contact you to verify any of those reported times or measurements?
No verifications, but a lot of their work was verified through more conversations that I've had with GMs and head coaches than I've had in the past. So it wasn't specific to those workouts, but there was much more conversation that I had on the, obviously FaceTime or on the phone with head coaches and GMs about players and about how they played. And because everything they did was on film, very, very minimal face-to-face or in-person workouts. So they wanted, somebody that they knew and somebody they trusted that they could, back up, obviously, what they saw.
And the final one on Julian before we move on. He added quite a bit of weight during his time at Notre Dame. How much more do you think he can handle on his frame while maintaining his athleticism? And how did he handle the disappointment of his broken leg to end his college career?
Well, I think Julian will continue to grow. He'll be in a great strength program in Detroit. I know their staff, they do a great job. So just his natural growth, he's going to continue to get bigger. What is that number? I don't know. But, he's a guy that can still continue to put on weight and get stronger and get bigger in a really good strength program. So you haven't seen a guy that is tapped out from a physicality standpoint. He's going to get bigger. He's going to get faster. He's going to get stronger. How did he handle the injury? He was certainly very disappointed. Obviously, the first thing you think about is, how's this going to affect me personally? But he put that behind him pretty quickly, and he was back out at practice, helping his unit, very engaged with our guys in bowl prep. And as a leader on our football team, I was very proud of the way he re-engaged himself immediately after. I don't want to say immediately, but there was a day or two there after he dealt with the injury, and was back working with his unit group and helping prepare them for the bowl game.
Moving on to the Carolina Panthers and Troy Pride. Troy Pride went 113th in the draft, very similar to Julian Love going 108th last year. Both your cornerback won at Notre Dame during their final seasons. How do you see their NFL careers differing or changing? And give us an example of their differing skill sets that they bring to the table.
Yeah, well, Troy, obviously possesses a different skill package. Julian, obviously had a lot of action on the football. Troy, not as much, but the physical skills, certainly jump out when you're talking about Troy. A track athlete, somebody with elite speed. So, you have two different players here from that standpoint. A lot of the evaluations on Julian were done based upon his ability to get to the football and pass breakups. Whereas Troy Pride, a lot of his evaluation is based upon his speed and his athletic ability. And so, in one respect, you're looking at a Julian Love and saying, here's a guy that makes a lot of plays. And on the other side, you're looking at Troy Pride and saying, here's a guy that has an incredible athletic ability. Let's get him in a position to make plays. So that's how they differ. I think Troy is a guy that is just starting to scratch his potential and where he could be as a player. And I think that's what a lot of the NFL people saw, and that's why you saw him taken where he was in the draft.
As you have coached Troy and watched him develop over the years, what clues have you seen that hint at a continued development while in the NFL?
Yeah, moving on to the next play. Troy can be an emotional guy sometimes. He's very competitive as well, but letting it go and moving on to the next play. And I think he's done a nice job of building that in his time here. I think early in his career, he'd let a play affect him. I think last year he was better at it. And then this past year, he got really good at it where he can move on to the next play. And I think that's just the maturation of a young man, understanding how that position itself requires, just to be balanced, mentally, play in and play out, and knowing that, you're going to have, your good plays and bad plays, but keep playing one play at a time. I think he's done a great job with the mental preparation part. I think that was been an area where he came in this year. He had all the physical tools. He needed to work on the mental preparation. I think he did a nice job this year.
I think what your answer to this plays really well into the follow-up for this question. Does that trait in your mind make Troy have the ability to match up with some of the elite NFC South receivers like Mike Evans, Julio Jones, and Michael Thomas?
Yeah, I think he's prepared himself to move towards that next level. There's another level for him now because he's going to step up in terms of even the players that he went against here at Notre Dame. And he went against some really good ones, the Michael Pittmans of the world who were drafted high. Going against Chase Claypool every day was a great way for him to develop that as well. So, Troy's ready for it. He put himself in that position. So, every time we went one-on-one, he was going against Chase Claypool. And that's a tough matchup, especially in a short field. So he'll be ready for it. He knows there's another level there for him, but I'm confident he's up for the challenge.
Great. We'll move on to the Cincinnati Bengals and Khalid Kareem. We have one question locked in for this right now. How much of an impact did it have on your team when Khalid passed on surgery to finish the season? And does that type of unselfish act influence NFL teams when they evaluated him?
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, I think Jerry Tillery kind of set that up last year in the room when Jerry passed on surgery. after the Stanford game. And I think, that's kind of something that our guys take a great deal of pride in. And if they can play through it, they're going to try to play for their teammates. And, Khalid, obviously did the same thing. Did it impact where he was in the draft? I don't know. He's a productive player for us through the remaining of the season, and he helped us win some football games. So, he was still drafted in a really solid position, and he helped our football team win 11 games. So I would hope that he feels like all of those things came together for him. He played a lot of football, winning football, won a lot of games, and he was extremely productive for us down the stretch.
A positive thought process question here. How big of a steal, in your opinion, is Khalid Kareem in the 5th round? And how long do you see him competing on the NFL level?
Well, I've talked to a lot of people about him, because, you're trying to compare him to Core, and they're different players. Khalid's a sneaky pass rusher, first of all. He gets off blocks. He has just those innate abilities to find a way to the quarterback, find a way to the football. He's going to be a guy that plays in this league for a while because he knows how to play the game. He just has that instinctive awareness of how to get off and shed a block, get to the quarterback, get to the football, and a lot of those things you don't teach. So it's going to be fun to watch his career.
Moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers and talking about Alohi Gilman, but also Dante Vaughn and Asmar Bilal. The first question comes from Philip Hauk, who says, the Chargers have been loading up with your former players. Do you have a special relationship with them, or has Drew Tranquill taken over as GM?
Well, GM Tedesco obviously, has been great in evaluating our players. Kevin Kelly, the lead scout, and obviously the entire organization feels as though our players have developed in a manner. Gus Bradley has enjoyed the defensive players that he's gotten a chance to work with in LA, and certainly, we want to be able to continue to develop great young men that can be great Chargers for them as well. And so we're just pleased that we've got young men that they believe in, that they trust in, that they believe can help their organization move towards a Super Bowl. So it's great to see that many guys that are in there and having an opportunity to help that football franchise.
So to play the comparison game with a lot of people that wouldn't watch Notre Dame usually, who would Alohi Gilman potentially compare to, either with a Notre Dame player, or how does he compare contrast with Drew Tranquill?
Well, he's got some of those, those mental awareness traits. I was talking to John Harbaugh because they were right there ready to take him as well. And I had a player who played for me, Haruki Nakamura in Cincinnati, and Haruki was drafted in the 5th round, right about the same time that Alohi was drafted. Played 4 years for John, and we had talked after that. That's exactly where he would have taken him. And what we talked about was his smarts, intuitiveness, toughness, and just makes your football team better in some fashion. You don't know how he does it sometimes, but he just influences others. He's we talked about the Larry Bird kind of mentality. He makes others around him better, and that's Alohi Gilman.
You've just mentioned Alohi's measurables, sometimes don't jump off the page, but it's the other things, the intangibles. But from the standpoint of personality, passion, and leadership, what does he bring to the NFL that college box scores might not reveal outside of that leadership thought process?
Well, all of our guys bring the same thing, and that is that they have the traits necessary to be successful, in the NFL, because they've got a great, foundation, their attitude, their grit, they're so focused. They're going to be trusted in so many ways with all the jobs that they're asked to handle. So these guys are going to come prepared, ready to go. And Alohi is a guy that, as I said, he's going to bring such a great attitude to the very first day that it rubs off on others. And he'll continue to that end when it's time to install the defense. He'll pick it up. He's a quick study. He's smart, and he knows football. And then he'll make plays because he has great awareness. And all those things come together when you have the right kind of guys.
It's great. Our final question on Alohi is, compare the Alohi that transferred to Notre Dame. In hindsight, was there anything that you got from him that surprised you once he set foot on campus?
I think we got probably more leadership. We got more of a, I think, bought in to the principles of Notre Dame. You look, when you're transferring, it's the Naval Academy, and the way of life there is so important as well. And sometimes that never really leaves you. And in some ways, maybe it will never leave him, but he totally immersed himself into the Notre Dame culture here. And, obviously did that by being a captain. And I don't know that I would have envisioned him when he transferred here that he had been a captain in a very short period of time.
Before we finish on Joe Staley, just two follow-ups on Cole. The first one kind of does your career arc a little bit, but given your experience with Travis Kelce, what are your parallels between him, how he plays, and how Cole plays?
Different players. Travis is first of all, very, very good athlete. I think that Travis and what separated, he was a quarterback for me as well. I think the size are very similar. I think Travis is much more suited in the passing game when he is extended. I think you're going to find out that at the end of the day, Cole is going to be an inline guy that can really do a great job as an inline tight end as well. Not that Travis, look, he's all pro. I don't think there's many things that you can say bad about him. But I think his effectiveness has been seen where he's detached a little bit more. So they're a little bit different from that standpoint. But I think if we're ever going to start comparing Cole Kmet right now to an all-pro, that's a pretty good thing.
Definitely. The last thing on Cole before we move on to Joe is, what did you learn about him as he worked back to health last September and then played the way he did in that Georgia game?
Well, I think what I learned about him more than anything else is that he's fearless. He never really worried about the injury. There were a lot of people that were concerned about, how would he come back? Will he be hesitant? Will he be feeling his way around? I don't know. I think a lot of people watched that Georgia game. He wasn't feeling around anybody. He was knocking people around. So I just think his fearlessness and his toughness really showed out in that game. And no one really knows until you come back from an injury like that, a shoulder injury particularly. And it was crazy because the way he did it, it was a non-contact period. So he gets injured in a non-contact period. He's out for all that time. And then when he comes back, he was full of contact. So it just told you a lot about Cole Kmet's mentality.
That's great. Thank you for those follow-ups. We're going to finish with a few Joe Staley questions. Joe Staley always seemed to have a unique ability to balance having fun and taking his job seriously. Did you see that in him as far back as when you were with him, and how did that rub off on his teammates?
Oh, yeah. Well, Joe was a multi-sport athlete. He had a great demeanor about him. He was always positive. He loved the challenge. The thing that stands out to me about Joe is he loved the challenge when we moved him from tight end to tackle. remember he was going up against Dan Bazine. Dan was drafted early in the NFL draft. He played defensive end for us at Central Michigan. Really good player for the Bears. And Dan was having his way with Joe Staley. Joe had just moved to tackle. And I remember Joe getting up. We were practicing on our grass field. They had a bunch of grass and dirt. And he was pulling the grass and dirt away from his face after getting knocked down for the third or fourth time. And he had a big smile on his face. And he turned to me, and I think it was Coach Quinn at times, says, boy, I'm really going to love this challenge. And so that was Joe Staley. He just loved the challenge of playing this game. And when he was put in a position where he needed to grow, he certainly did that. Look, 13 years in the NFL, I think he averaged like 14 games a season. I mean, he's a first-team Hall of Famer. I mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, excuse me. And that kind of durability, his consistency. I think there were 6 or 7 different head coaches. It's a testament to him and his character and who he is as a person, a great mentor. So I don't have enough good things to say about Joe Staley.
What was it that when back then and you followed him at the 49ers that led you to believe that he could have this success and this longevity in the NFL?
Well, like I said, just who he was, his makeup. He was so competitive. He was so athletic. I don't know if people remember this, but I'd be hard-pressed. I don't have the numbers, but I'd be hard-pressed to think that there's anybody that has come close to running a 40-yard dash time at the combine at the speed that he did. He ran 4.7. 4.7. They were talking about this big guy from Louisville running 5.0. He ran 4.7. And so he just had an incredible physical gift. He ran a 22-something 200 meters. I mean, he was just so talented, and he had toughness. He was the consummate gentleman off the field, tough guy on the field. And with that length, we turned a football team around in very short order with a new quarterback, a freshman running back. Kent Smith threw for over 2,000 yards. We had a freshman running back run for over 1,000 yards, and it was Joe Staley who set that table.
Last 2 questions here. I know you already mentioned one great memory with Joe. Are there any other specific memories that come to mind when looking back at your time with him at Central Michigan?
Yeah, the only one was with his dad. His dad was not a fan of moving him from tackle to tight end. Matter of fact, he fought it, and I said, you got to trust me on this one. I know this doesn't seem like the right move for him, but he's going to make a lot of money in the NFL. And to this day, Mr. Staley and I, we have a pretty good relationship now.
That's great. And we'll end with one that kind of connects Joe with Notre Dame. What similarities do you see between Joe Staley when you coached him in college and some of the high draft pick linemen you've coached at Notre Dame? And is there one that you can compare Joe to for people that are more Notre Dame specific on this beat writing?
Oh, Mike McGlinchey. I mean, they're so similar. I said that first time I walked into Penn Charter High School, and I watched McGlinchey playing basketball. I said, that's Joe Staley. Playing basketball. He was a tight end. Mike was. He just had so many similarities in terms of his demeanor, his attitude, his character, the way he handled himself. Gentleman off the field, but a tough guy on the field. There were so many parallels there. And then when he gets drafted by the 49ers and those guys become pretty fast friends, it was not a surprise to me.
Awesome. Coach, thank you very much for taking the time. To everyone else, all the recordings will be available at UNE.com/pressbox within the hour. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.